Welcome, Madridistas. How are you? Do you remember that goal? Not long ago, right? Not long ago. Well, it's going to be 2 years soon, but it was the beginning. We hoped it would be the start of something, well, historic, incredible. How excited and hopeful we were, right? Well, since that moment, everything has gone downhill. Barca beat Getafe, securing another league title if it wasn't already theirs. They're already 11 points ahead. Madrid will finish the job at Camp Nou because they're going to do it, right? We'll do it ourselves. And it's torture, pure torture. But well, now we see this, we compare it with certain moves from Mbappe now, because one thing is clear, there are several people to blame for another terrible year like this, right? I mean, there's the big, huge asterisk, which here at the camp we really emphasize. From the refereeing establishment yesterday, there was yet another robbery. And it's been like that in many match days of this league. But there's also the poor form and very bad performance of many players on a squad who think they're better than they really are. They didn't respect the first coach, so what about the second one? And well, the boss, the owner of the club allows it, the president allows it. And so it's like you throw everything into a pot and make this crappy stew, which is what we've had to swallow these last 2 years. Well, hey, congratulations, and well done. I'm bringing up Vinicius because if we're going to criticize Mbappe, then Vinicius too, right? Vinicius too, because then, of course, there are people offended on one side, people offended on the other. But honestly, I don't care at all. Since I'm not siding with either of them at all, I think they're both great. I think they both have incredible potential, but there's also a reality. The two of them aren't on the same wavelength, and neither of them does the job their coaches ask of them. Arbeloa seems to be happy with both of them, but Xavi definitely wasn't because he asked them to do things they didn't do. And look, in the end, who did the club, represented by Florentino Perez, give the power to? The coach or the players? To the players. The stars, right? If Xavi Alonso had had a problem with Fran Garcia or Asensio, they wouldn't have given the power to the player, right? But he had that issue with Vinicius. So, well, now let's talk about Mbappe. But I just remembered this. Look, it's Vinicius's chance from yesterday from the ref cam. And the way he shoots after this, he shoots like a kid, right into the goalkeeper's hands. It was something else, but it was cringeworthy to watch. And I've always said the same thing. Vinicius, when he's at his best, is the most decisive footballer in the world. I've always said that. People who think otherwise, who say you're criticizing him, no, excuse me. I've said about Vinicius, he's received more praise from me than any other footballer ever has. Man, I've also said many times that his mistakes compared to what he's capable of are just ridiculous. Those balls that go to the third tier, those weird passes and those shots like that. Then with the amazing goals he scored, and someone might say to me, no, players have the right to make mistakes. Yeah, but I don't know if you get what I mean. There are a lot of footballers who make mistakes. Now, with Vinicius, he can do the best, better than any footballer in the world. And the worst at the same time, it's something, well, it fascinates me. It really fascinates me. So that was it yesterday, right? Yesterday, Vinicius's moves seemed like they were from a year ago or so. After not winning the Ballon d'Or, he said he would try 10 times out of 10 if necessary, right? And that we weren't ready, right? Of course, ready for what he gave us next. Hey, playing a few matches in a row at a certain level, I mean, doing it well, you know. For example, in Lisbon or in the tie against Benfica overall, he did well there. It's curious that Mbappe wasn't by his side, or that in the times when Vinicius has played really well, Mbappe wasn't playing. Vinicius's best moments this season have coincided with Mbappe being out. That really makes us think, huh? That really makes us think. Regarding how both of them fit together, and then also how each one performs individually. If I start with Vin, I'll say, I don't know if you remember, on one play, maybe against Atletico de Madrid, he said, I'm so good. Oh, I'm so good. That's what he said. The cameras caught him, right? And, well, look, after what happened yesterday, he could have said it again. The thing is, beyond the joke, we need to bring these people down a notch. We need to bring them down a notch, starting with Vinicius's contract renewal. What is this guy doing asking for 30 million now? Do you believe it? They say the agreement is close. But for how much? For how much? How much is he going to ask for now after what he's done? How much is he going to ask for? We need to bring them down a notch. And we need to tell them, look, a coach is coming who, if you don't do what he wants, will leave you on the bench and you'll be screwed. I hope so. I hope so. And I don't know if Florentino Perez is the man. He could be, of course, the way he's handled himself, well, throughout his whole life. I don't think so, unfortunately. The thing is, of course, it gets to a point where he wants to break with everything. But, well, I still think I'm not one of those who asked for Florentino's resignation. But if a coach doesn't come, and now we're talking about coaches, club and cross and all that, if a coach doesn't come to put these guys in their place, and if they don't perform for him, he benches them. And if the president doesn't back the coach, we're in real trouble for the next few years, huh? Real trouble. But, well, there's Vini's situation. But wait, look, there's a 7-minute, 36-second video of Mbappe from yesterday. I can't show it because it's Pero's footage, but for example, in this one, look, here to defend Vini a little, right? Because it's true that sometimes he does his job or what his coach tells him to do, which is to stick to the sideline on the left wing, create a lot of play from there, and he definitely does it. Often, I don't agree with all the criticism Vini receives. Sometimes he reaches the end line and finds no one there, which should also be mentioned. But, well, look, yesterday, instead of moving into space, he decides to stay back. This is more of the same. From Mbappe, but 1,000 from Mbappe, absolutely dragon-like moves. For a number 9, even though he put the number 10 on his jersey. And of course, if you compare him, it's not like he's done it in many stretches playing with Real Madrid either. Suddenly, he does it. But, wow, what a coincidence. When he played his first match with Real Madrid, do you remember that play? Vinicius came down the right wing, but the cross was off. Mbappe, though, did. He got into a scoring position, into the number 9 spot. The ball was going out on the left wing. Bellingham arrived. Look, Mbappe here, how he was asking Bellingham for the ball when he saw behind the Atalanta player, when he saw that the Englishman no longer had an angle, and with a dribble, he created that space to get an angle. Mbappe, what a shame, because this image isn't in 16:9. It's a bit split here. But do you remember what the Frenchman did? Which is, I go here, I go there, and I make myself available here. The run to get to the penalty spot, and from there, shoot and score a great goal. It was Mbappe's first goal with Real Madrid, the first of many, and what a coincidence that he scored it on the very first day. From that point on, Mbappe started to lose form. But watch out, not his goals. That's what's curious here. What makes this footballer so fascinating? But more than fascinating, what really shows you is that this guy could do much more than he does, and that would be truly outrageous. But he would win the Ballon d'Or 5, 6, 7, or even 8 years in a row. If he did something that's not too much to ask from a physical beast like him, because he really is a physical beast, which is like, hey man, track their fullback, press, work, run, and you'll see how it goes. You'll even score more goals and it'll be better for the team, he said. Recently, in an interview with Mbappe, there with Chouameni, an interview in France now during the FIFA break, he said, I know that if I defend it, it would be better for the team. And he says, but man, and he does the same thing again and does the same thing again and does the same thing again. And nobody punishes him. The coach doesn't punish him. Let's see, the coach might want to punish him. Or maybe he tells him to attack the space, but he doesn't. So what happens? Does he take him off? Florentino, like, how can you not put Mbappe in? This is what's terrible about Madrid, because Florentino would quickly say to him, but how can you not start Mbappe, man? Of course. This is the downside of having coaches like Arbeloa, who I think will have a good career as a coach. But in the end, it's to his credit that he ended up in the role, that he wasn't hired for it. It's a different story. If a real heavyweight manager comes in like Mourinho, that would be something else. But we'd have to see if Florentino is up for it. Look, what I said about Mbappe, since his debut on August 14th, 2024, with the goal against Atalanta in that UEFA Super Cup final, he has played 62 league matches, 25 Champions League games, and 5 Copa del Rey matches. Only 4 Club World Cups and 3 Super Cups. Well, 4 Club World Cups, 4 in the Club World Cup, okay? 3 Spanish Super Cups and 1 European Super Cup. Just imagine, 4 Club World Cups. include the Intercontinental there. Well, in his first season, 59 matches, 44 goals. In this one, 41 matches, 41 goals, 85 goals in 100 matches with Real Madrid. It's just insane. It's just insane. It's insane. And of course, this, for anyone, if I'm now defending, using footage to show where he needs to position himself and so on, anyone absolutely focused on results or who only looks at numbers would say to me, but what are you talking about? Look at his numbers. But I bet they don't, right? I bet they don't. His numbers don't convince us because we see that he can do much more. I mean, my criticism is constructive. I wouldn't get rid of Mbappe tomorrow. I would like to have a coach who could convince him, who could really convince him. Now we're going to see a coach who convinces him. He tried to convince him and couldn't. Because this is different. It's about yesterday's offside. Trent Alexander-Arnold is almost getting the ball in an offside position. He's not offside. Vinicius at least takes a step back and puts himself in a position where he's not caught offside. And Mbappe keeps doing his thing with everyone in front of him. Because you tell yourself, hey, it turns out that, damn, he didn't have a clear read on the situation. That happens to a lot of forwards. And it's a really strange thing. No, there's really no better example of an offside you could avoid than this one, damn it. You're alone in the box. You have everyone in front of you. You can see the ball perfectly. You see the player who just got the ball and nearly went offside. The play suggests stepping back to gain an advantage later. And he doesn't do it. He doesn't care. It's just that seriously, it's incredible, man. Well, here's the fact. Kylian Mbappe has been called offside 31 times in the league this season. He's second among Real Madrid players. And for Barcelona, it's Lamine Yamal with less than half, 14. Last season, the Frenchman was number one in being caught offside in the league. A total of 44 times 17, more than the second place. Winning is tough with a player who's always offside. That's for sure. Even with all his goals, it's incredible. It's incredible. Well, of course. Do you guys remember this from Luis Enrique? This is really intense, huh? This is really intense. I think it's a documentary from Canal Plus. From Canal Plus, right? Maybe Canal Plus France. Later, Movistar Plus included it in their Luis Enrique report. I won't put it on full screen just in case of copyright issues. Anyway, just listening to Luis Enrique is enough for us. Look at what Luis Enrique was saying to Mbappe before a match at Paris Saint-Germain. What Kylian had to do and how he told him. Huh? Watch.
Kylian, you have to mark the right center back. If you don't mark the right center back, we're not going to win this match. Mark the right center back so we can press together. You need to help. This is a tough match, and we need everyone. Everyone needs to be involved, all 11. Otherwise, it won't work. We don't have a philosophy of just letting it slide.
Wait. I just can't. And look, it's Luis Enrique. And honestly, we Madrid fans don't like Luis Enrique. But I couldn't relate more to Luis Enrique when he says it's a tough match. Man, if we don't all help, he couldn't explain it better. Well, he didn't manage to do it. The real psychopath Luis Enrique didn't manage to do it football-wise because the guy goes there with, well, they believe in his idea. He didn't manage to do it. Look at what he says in the rest of this excerpt.
Our philosophy isn't simply letting Mbappe do whatever he wants, right? Because Kylian Mbappe, with the previous philosophy that PSG had, didn't win any major titles. That's the problem football players have. They're treated like gods. Apparently, since he scores 3 goals, no one can criticize him. Everyone gets upset if anything is said about the star. Stars should set a better example, like Kylian. Kylian sets an example, but that doesn't mean he never plays badly. His coach can tell him when he plays badly. And besides, he knew it.
And, well, that whole thing about Kylian setting an example, probably because in some matches he listened to him, but in the end, Luis Enrique is the one who says, next year we won't have him and I'll be able to control all the situations here. I would like to remember how PSG played throughout that whole season. And if Kylian Mbappe actually listened to Luis Enrique in some matches, hey, it would actually be really good to confirm that he did because there's hope. But look at how Luis Enrique talks. No matter how much you dislike Luis Enrique, we all do because of how he left Madrid, his love for Barca, and everything he said about us. He wore the Real Madrid badge and scored the 4th goal in a 5-0 win over Barca. But when he says, oh, you can't say anything to the star, no, it's actually the opposite. He's the one who has to set an example. And when he says no, but of course, they explain to you that since he scores 3 goals, everything is fine. No, sorry, but no. I absolutely agree here with what Luis Enrique says. Of course, and he's also referring to those who came before without mentioning names. But the ones who came before were Tuchel, right? Tuchel and Pochettino. And Pochettino, Miguelito says, look, the other day on Cadena Cope, that he thinks it's going to be him. The Argentine coach, currently the United States national team coach, the new coach of Real Madrid, he thinks more about him because, well, he fits a bit with the personality that Florentino would like to have as the coach of Real Madrid. He might give the impression of being a bit more manageable and so on. Anyway, the thing is that after watching Ramon's video with Joaquin Maroto, I was a bit more convinced by the option he was talking about, which is Tada, this one. Jurgen Klopp, and next to him, Kroos. Maybe it's an amazing show-off. Maybe it is. I think Joaquin Maroto said it more as a wish about Kroos, not about Klopp. As for what he said about Klopp, it makes perfect sense. Klopp is the only one out of all these guys, Nagelsmann, Mourinho, Pochettino, and so on, who doesn't have a team right now. He's the easiest one to get out of there. If you ask Mourinho, he'll come tomorrow, but Klopp is the easiest to get out of there. Apparently, they're saying that Anas Lagari, who's Florentino's main advisor, is telling him that it's the German, and the only thing separating Klopp from Real Madrid is him saying yes. They say it just takes a yes, and he's the one who'd have the least trouble coming. Well, he also has a contract with Red Bull, but that contract, well, if Madrid calls you. But the German coach has to be convinced because he recently criticized Madrid for what they did with Xabi Alonso, because he knows how the club works. Florentino will really need to convince him, like, will you let me work and have power? Otherwise, I'm not coming just to show up. Of course, having Kroos by his side would be a dream for all Madrid fans, but for several reasons, because of the language issue. There's no better interpreter for what he wants. Kroos, Klopp on the team, or to convey whatever message he wants to convey, since Kroos would also be training as a future Real Madrid coach. He would be what Zidane was with Ancelotti. They're all good things. Kroos would enter that locker room again without playing, but he would come back. He would raise the IQ of that locker room. Absolutely. I mean, a lot of good things, sure, but look, I'm going to stick with a great tweet from Alvaro Escorial. He said this about Real Madrid's coaching situation. He says, the question is whether you're going to let them work. You signed Xabi Alonso after monitoring him for 2 years, letting him start in the youth academy. You signed him for 3 years, and you fired him after 5 months for imposing your method and taking away all his decision-making power and authority. Imagine Klopp hearing that he has to play someone or being questioned about why he substituted Vinicius, so-and-so, or whoever. He'll pull a Camacho on you the first time that happens, and he won't care at all about leaving you high and dry with an even bigger mess. That's just how it is. Yes, that's how it is. So, I don't know. The idea of Klopp and Kroos sounds really good. It sounds fantastic. But here, everything depends on Florentino backing off. Not with the money, but in how much he controls things. Well, what we all know, he's meddling with the squad. Anyway, I hope everything goes well for you. Give a like if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel. Please comment, share, and that's it. Have a good night. Bye.